Hello and welcome to the Professional Development Program on Creating Winning Business Teams. My name is Abby Hahn and I will be your PDP host. During our session, we are diving into what it takes to make the best teams in the workplace. Leading the conversation is Greg Tesimale, a senior manager at CISCO Systems, leading global university recruiting. Greg has been with CISCO for 6 years and joined after getting his MBA at BYU in organizational behavior and leadership. As a new hire to CISCO, Greg was invited to and graduated from CISCO's HR Leadership Development Program. While at CISCO, Greg has held several roles as a talent brand manager, recruiter, HR business partner, HR deal lead for mergers and acquisitions, and now as a university recruiting lead. Greg is passionate about enabling talent, culture, teams, leaders, and organizations to drive business, customer, and community value. Prior to his MBA, Greg worked in sales, entrepreneurship, and general management, and even spent some time as an educator. Greg lives in Santa Clara, California, with his wife and 4 children, and together they spend much of their free time playing sports, surfing at the beach, and doing karaoke jam sessions in the living room. Greg, we are excited to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much, Abby. Appreciate that warm introduction and excited to be here with you, with Baylor, and as part of the PDP program. I'm excited to share with you the topic that I'm going to discuss with each of you, and hope that it is an extremely relevant topic of conversation as you think about where you're at from a university standpoint, and then the career that you guys are looking towards. As mentioned by Abby, my name is Greg Tesimale, and I lead university recruiting for CISCO. And I've been here for about 6 years. For those of you not familiar with CISCO Systems, it's a Fortune 100 company that's been around for just about 40 years, focused on technology, predominantly the connection of networks, building the internet for all, but a number of other areas like cybersecurity, collaboration, data center, and cloud. I've loved my experience at CISCO. As Abby mentioned, I've held a number of different roles, all within the HR space, currently focused on university recruiting, but prior mergers and acquisitions, an HR business partner supporting sales, as a professional recruiter, and also working in talent brand, which is revolving around employment brand. Prior to CISCO, I've held roles in mostly sales, entrepreneurship, and general management, always with a focus and emphasis and passion around organizations and teams. And that's ultimately what led to what Abby shared, which was me going from my undergraduate degree in international business, years of experience in between, and then getting my MBA in organizational behavior, leadership, and strategy. As I think about both where I'm at in my life and some of the expertise and the skills and experience that I have, and then also thinking about you as students and what's maybe top of mind for you, that's what led to kind of the brainstorming with Abby and team around what would be the most beneficial thing for me to share with you today. And that's where I landed on what she shared, which is the topic around creating winning business teams. And as I think about us as humans, we are wired to working in teams, groups, communities, from the beginning of time. Initially for survival, and the benefits that we've gotten from teams and communities and our societies throughout our evolution have been significant, but always to the benefit of the individual and the whole. As individuals now with COVID, our teams, our communities, our societies, our circles have been disrupted in many ways. And what that's taught me is how critical and important teams are, to where when we see that we can engage directly or be a part of the circles or communities that we have been in the past, many of us have experienced some challenges or lack of engagement. And that's what's been a bit of a testament to me of how critical teams are. There's a quote that I love that goes back to an African proverb. And it talks about saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I absolutely believe that's true. When I think about one of the teams that I was a part of as a young man, it was a baseball team. And we had that chant that many of you are probably familiar with, which is kind of the stated acronym around what team stands for, where together everyone achieves more. I absolutely believe that. And in studying teams for years And in working in organizations like CISCO and supporting teams to be successful in driving businesses, I've absolutely seen that as a collective team, we can accomplish more than the individual, right? It's the sum of our parts that create the team. In the business space, we call that synergy, right? We talk about the famous formula, 1+1 does not equal 2, but rather 1+1 equals 3. Because we do believe that in the business setting, when you bring together people with different and distinct backgrounds, you actually create something better than the sum of their parts individually. So absolutely, as I've gone throughout my career, I found that there is extreme value in teams. And I'm hopeful that today, as I share a bit about my learnings and experiences around teams and some of my recommendations for you as students, as you think about the teams that you're on as part of your university experience, or the team that you look to join, whether it be from an internship or postgraduate experience, I'm hopeful that I'll be able to share some things that are critical as you think about how you can select and contribute to a team that goes further than you could by yourself. As we kind of move forward, what I'd love for you to do is to kind of step back and think about the best team that you've been a part of, because you've got significant learnings and experience yourself, whether it be a formal team within a business or even a team within sports or your community or your religion. There's a lot of teams that each of us have been a part of where we can pull some best practices back and think about how we replicate that in the next teams that we become a part of or contribute to. When I think about one of the teams that really meant a lot to me and helped set a foundation for what a best team is, it's actually not within business. It was actually within baseball. It was the California Angels that I was a part of during my Little League. And I learned a lot about teams during that experience. And I encourage you to think about some of the characteristics that you've learned in the teams that you've been a part of and how you can replicate that moving forward within business. Within CISCO, we recognize that through teams, we create more value, as I mentioned. Not just value for the team itself, but even customer and shareholder value. Teams, we believe, deliver more value to the business and to our customers than the individual would itself. And in recognizing that, for us, we've been obsessed with teams because we believe that that's going to enable us, if we can create best or winning teams, that'll enable us to win as an entire business. And so we stepped back and we wanted to explore or understand our best teams. And so what we did is we kind of thought, okay, what are our best teams within CISCO? And then how can we make more teams like our best teams? Are there specific characteristics? Is there a magic formula? Is there something that we can learn to help us create more of our best teams? And I share this because the findings are significant, not only for us as a business, but for you, I think, as students, as you look at the team that you want to join after graduation and how you can contribute important characteristics to that team to help them become a winning team. And so what we did is we stepped back, and this was a study that we probably started about 6 years ago. And we said, okay, let's understand first who our best teams are. So we worked with our executives across the globe to identify our best teams across CISCO for a number of different reasons, whether it be engagement, retention of employees, output, productivity, whatever, design, time to market, whatever it might be. We identified the best teams with our executive team. And then what we did is we also said, okay, now let's also look at the rest of our team so that we have a control group that we can compare our best teams to. And we asked all of our team members within our best teams a specific set of questions to understand the characteristics that make it a best team. We also asked those same exact questions of the rest of the teams so we could get a baseline for what the average across CISCO looks like. And what we discovered was phenomenal. We discovered characteristics that I think are critical to you as you think about the teams that you're contributing to within the university and the next teams that you're going to join and how you can help it to become, if it's not already, a best team. And we identified a number of different characteristics that build a best team, but there were 4 that stood out far above with the best teams versus the rest of the teams. And what we learned is that our best teams harness the individual excellence of each team member, unlock the collective excellence of the team, recognize moments of excellence, and do so in an environment of safety and trust. What's interesting is when you look at these characteristics, it doesn't talk about deep data analytics or technical skills necessarily. It actually talks about things that are more cultural based, that help to drive a team to be a winning team or a best team and contribute to business success. What we found is first, strengths. How do we enable or support individuals to play to their strengths? First of all, do we recognize those strengths? within each of our employees? And do we align them to work that allows them to play to their strengths? Because what we found is when people play to their strengths, they are more engaged and they drive better output than if you align them to something that they loathe or something that they are not strong at or have maybe an area of opportunity. The second, and maybe my favorite, is actually trust. And when we think about trust, what we were talking about and what we learn from these best teams is it's not predictive trust that I can predict that my team members are going to do X when Y happens, but it's vulnerable trust and understanding that my team has my back. That is extremely critical to the foundation of a best team and how you can seek out and contribute to a best team. The third thing was recognition. Our best teams more frequently recognized excellent performance amongst the team and celebrated it one with another, not just from the leader to the team member, but even across the team members and up back to the leader. Best teams recognize one another for their successes and for their learnings at the same time. The fourth and final one, and like I said, there were others, but the fourth one is that teams have shared values, shared beliefs, things that they share amongst each other which create a culture of trust and helps them to march towards a similar goal. As you contribute to teams within Baylor in your university and look for the best and winning team that you want to join afterwards, I encourage you to look for an organization that has these characteristics present. And let's say that you join a team that doesn't have them present. How can you, as a team member, influence across the team and with the leader to try and build these key characteristics into the team so that you can move a team to becoming a best or winning team? And so these were a couple of the things that we found that were absolutely critical. As I mentioned, my favorite is trust. And as I think about trust, there's a famous quote by a business strategist who you might have heard of and award recognized author, Patrick Lencioni. And one of the things that he's best known for is a model around what makes a functional and dysfunctional team. And he's got this model that he's presented and actually written a New York Times bestseller book around. And Patrick Lencioni focused on the foundation of teams is trust. So similar to what we learned in our best team study at CISCO, Patrick Lencioni, with his industry leading and global research, found that trust is at the heart of teamwork. And team members have to learn to trust one another if they're going to be a real team. And he's actually the one that taught me that it's not through his teachings, it's not predictive trust, but rather it's vulnerable trust. My teammates have my back. If I take a risk and fail at the opportunity to take the team to the next level, I know that they're going to catch me when I fall and lead me to the next innovation or the next risk and support me. What we learned as well through our research, both internal and external, is what's the benefits of a best team? How does a best team actually lead to a winning organization? And in doing research with Harvard Business Review, at Gallup, and other different research sources, we found that best teams lead to consistently certain things that the rest of teams don't. Those who embody the characteristics that I mentioned and more are more likely to be productive. According to this, 38% more likely to be productive. Our best teams experience, and this is pretty significant, they experience 140% stronger earnings per share as compared to their peers. And when you think about earnings per share, oftentimes you're thinking about how they manage their OPEX or what they're doing with revenue or how they're driving sales. But actually the team itself and their engagement across the team and the characteristics of a team, if they are a best or winning team, is actually going to have much stronger earnings per share for their shareholders and for their company. Best teams and their members are 3 times more likely to be engaged on the team. And because of that, and for other reasons, best teams are 50% more likely to see turnover among their team members because they're engaged and happy in their contribution to a winning team. So as you think about the team that you're looking to join, you can seek out many teams. If you seek out a team with these best qualities, your chance of winning, both for your team, for your company, for your shareholders, your customers, and for yourself, are going to be realized as you seek out those characteristics. As we did this study, another interesting thing that we learned is that best teams are led by best leaders. And as you think about the team that you want to join post-graduation from Baylor, I encourage you to think about the leader who's leading that team, because what we found within CISCO as we did this study is that our best teams are generally led by the best leaders. And that was a surprising thing as we started to go through this research. And it also, we uncovered a bit as we drilled down into those best leaders. What did they do differently on their teams that created a best team? And I'll share with you a bit of a formula that we learned that I'm hopeful as you look at your next opportunity from a career standpoint, that you can apply this to think about the leader that you want to align yourself to, or the leaders that you want to align yourself to. We found through our studies that the best leaders do a few things consistently. One, they meet with each team member weekly, not just to discuss their priorities and their work for the week, but to talk about their career, to talk about them as an individual, to really get to know them and support them. How can I align you to your strengths? Whatever. But that is extremely critical, where if a leader is not meeting with their team member weekly, it decreases their ability to become a winning team. The second is that best leaders align team members to work they love, that plays to their strength and challenges them to grow. As students, I hope that throughout your academic experience, you've been able to understand your strengths, the work that you love, and where you want to grow in your career. I encourage you to pursue a leader who allows you to play in those areas, because that's going to make you more engaged as an individual, but also help you contribute to a winning team. Best leaders also set clear expectations for the team members and encourage and model recognition of excellence across the team. Best leaders also establish team rituals, and not just the rituals that are important to them as a leader, but any ritual that is going to benefit the entire group in terms of what they value and the experiences that they're looking for with across the team. And those rituals pull the team together and create that culture. The last one is that best leaders build a culture of vulnerable trust. They need to model the trust. And if they create trust, it will absolutely exist amongst the team. If they do not, then the team will lack in trust because that leader has not led that. So as you think about the role that you're looking to play after your academic experience, not only seek out a best team that has the characteristics that I mentioned, but also seek out a best leader. And at the end, I'll talk a little bit about how you can seek out a leader and a team that embodies these. One of the things that we've learned and often has been said in the industry is that people lead managers, not companies. Best leaders will lead to the benefits of a best team, as mentioned, engagement, retention, shareholder value. But what's the downside of having a poor leader in place? The downside is that the employees will not stick around. It does not matter how amazing the company is on its brand. It doesn't matter how amazing their products are and how much you love them. Honestly, it won't matter how much you get paid at that company. It won't matter whether they have free food or what perks you get as an employee. If your manager is not a strong manager or a best leader and has those characteristics, you will not be happy in that organization and you will move on. It's important to think about not only selecting a leader, but if you find yourself in a position where a best leader is not in place, how do you work with that leader to create an environment where they build the best team around them? And how can you influence that? And I encourage you to try and do so. The last thing that we found in this study is that as we focus significantly on best teams and best leaders, what we found over the last 6 years is that when you do that, it actually creates a best culture. At CISCO, over the last 6 years, we've focused significantly. And in 2019 and in 2020, the last 2 years, CISCO was recognized by Fortune magazine and Great Places to Work as the #1 great place to work in the world. And I don't think that that's by happenstance. I think it's because that we understand that winning businesses are built on the backs of winning teams. And when we focus on building winning teams around winning leaders, that we're going to lead to success as an organization. When we think about culture, one of the quotes that I heard as an undergraduate student was that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And this is from Peter Drucker, who is a well-renowned business strategist. And I'm sure many of you have heard of Peter Drucker. When I sat in my class back as an undergraduate and I heard this, I thought it was nonsense, to be honest. I thought that strategy is king and that culture is fluff. But what I learned over my years of experience in business is that Peter was absolutely inspired. I have seen businesses who failed despite having an amazing strategy because they did not have the culture to sustain that strategy. I've even started new businesses in my time in entrepreneurship where if we didn't focus on culture first and building the culture of our organization, our evolving strategy would have never have taken place. And so when we think about culture, it's important that you think about the culture of the organization. Now, how does we as recruiters and leaders in the business world, how do we define culture? And how do we identify what an appropriate culture is for us to align ourselves to? And that's extremely important. Culture is not what people say. Culture is what people do, right? It's not your national culture. It's not your ethnic culture. Those things are important. But when we think about a culture of an organization, what we don't want to do is look for everybody that has the exact same culture from an ethnicity standpoint. We want people from diverse backgrounds. But what we do want from culture is people that have the same vision, the same mission, the same values, the same beliefs, people who see eye to eye in terms of how they want to work and what they want their work to accomplish for their team and for the world. And so as we think about culture, I encourage you to seek out a best culture. And what I learned in my time in mergers and acquisitions, I used to do operational diligence, discovery with our executives of startups that we were looking to acquire for CISCO. And CISCO is a very acquisitive company. So I've met with startups, founders, and CEOs of many companies. And as I, in my role, was intended to look at a bit of the organizational structure and culture, I would ask them about the culture of their organization. And what I found is what they told me is not always what their culture actually is. And so what we learn is the best way to identify somebody's culture is to observe them. It's what they do versus what they say. So when you think about a culture that you want to align yourself to after graduation, yes, look at Glassdoor. Yes, look at the company's website and their social media tools. But honestly, they're going to tell you what they want you to hear. So I encourage you to instead to seek out, to try and see what they do, to learn from the experience of those who are there or have been there to understand what the culture really is. As I come to closing, a couple just key takeaways from my learnings and my experience in my career, as well as from the studies that we've had at CISCO around best teams, best leaders, and best culture. First of all, I want to advocate and recommend strongly that you seek out a team post-graduation that is absolutely focused on those three important pillars. And as you think about how do I do that? How do I seek out a best team? The first thing I encourage you to do is to meet with the team members as best you can, whether you're going through the recruiting process, whether you know people that work within that company, and you're just exploring network, and ask them questions. Ask them about their experience on their team. Ask them what they love about the team. Ask them about the team rituals. Ask them about how they recognize and celebrate things as a team. Ask the team members about the leader. How does the leader lead? And how does that influence the team itself? If you can, meet with the leader themselves, whether it's through the interview process or simply from networking. Meet with the leader so that you can understand your potential future leader and whether or not they build a culture that is reflective of a team that you want to be a part of. And if it has those important characteristics of both a best team and a best leader, that's going to create a best culture. Ask the leader questions and pay attention to the questions that the leader asks you, because that's also going to be reflective of what they value, and step back to figure out if that's a culture that you'll align yourself to. And then lastly, focus on a best team that creates a best culture. Think about the shared vision, the shared values and beliefs of that organization, and see how it's played out. Remember what I said, it's not what they say, it's rather what they do. So reach out to people who are part of the organization, even if it's a student from Baylor who attended that company through an internship or is working there today or was previously there. Reach out to anybody to get to the experience of what they experienced on that team. Don't sacrifice when it comes to the team, the leader, and the culture, because I promise you that if you seek out a culture that is reflective of the characteristics that builds the best team and aligns to what you're interested in, I promise you that you're going to be more engaged and more productive and be able to contribute to a winning team. So I'm hopeful that this was helpful in terms of what is a best approach to how you can identify and create a winning team. And I wish you the best of luck as you go throughout the teams in your university experience and beyond. Abby, I know that you've got a couple questions that you've pulled together from some of your peers. I'd love to turn it over and open to any Q&A that might be of benefit to all of you.
Yes, well, thank you, Greg, for sharing with us how the best teams, leaders, and cultures can change the trajectory of one's career. The first student question that we have is, how has the average team member changed, and what does a normal candidate look like now compared to previous years?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And as mentioned, my role is in university recruiting, and I support the globe, and I support all of our business functions from corporate functions and sales through to engineering. So I've seen a lot of different profiles come through different functions. The one thing I'll say is there is no average. And I think that that's critically important. In the world that we're in today, I think in some ways we used to hold a pedestal for what average looked like. In my team, I only want people that look like X. I only want people who communicate like Y. I only want people that are Z. And I think what we're realizing is that diverse backgrounds contribute significantly to the success of a team. And so I would say the average is kind of done away. And instead, we want people that bring their true and authentic self, who they are, wherever they come from, and regardless of their background, because we recognize that people, when they bring their strengths and who they are, their own DNA, that they contribute to a winning team versus looking for everybody to look the same way or act the same way, or looking for people to be something that they're not. And so in many ways, the average has been disrupted pretty significantly.
That's great insight. The second question is, what is the best way to redirect team members who are not understanding the team's vision or goals?
That's a great question. And I'll start with, actually, before we think about redirecting, I'll start with the initiation of the strategic goals or vision of the organization, because I think that that's the foundation upon which, if that wasn't done correctly, you're more likely to experience instances where team members aren't fully bought into the vision. And I think the key focus that we find with teams is that a winning team, where they come together to build the strategy and the vision together, where everyone has a voice, is more likely to create a vision that's reflective of kind of diverse backgrounds, that's brainstormed and cast a wider net around potential opportunities that might drive the team to success. But also what you find is people are more bought into the vision when they had a chance to create it themselves. So I'd say first and foremost, make sure that you seek out, whether it's in a project team within your university or a team that you're going to join through an internship or post-graduation, make sure that you create a democratic approach to building your vision and strategic values, because then people are going to be brought along having the chance to voice their opinion from the onset. Now, let's say that somebody, despite being a part of that, starts to not see eye to eye with the rest of the team, or you add a new team member onto the team who wasn't part of that initiation or strategy session around the vision. Oftentimes you will experience that. I imagine that as students and project teams, you guys have experienced that yourselves. And I absolutely have seen that as a leader of teams within my career as well. And I think what's important is to step back to that same conversation that was had originally. What are we trying to solve for, right? Who is our customer, and what are we trying to solve for? What are the pain points that's trying to drive us to the solution that we're trying to build? And I think if you do it with data, and if you do it with a solution in mind in terms of the outcome, it's easier to bring people along than to just focus on one individual piece. The second thing I'll say is ask the questions. Don't assume. Ask people to understand, what is it about the vision or the strategy that you think isn't aligning with your perspective? Because sometimes we can make assumptions on what somebody's challenged with from aligning to the vision. So definitely ask that question so that you can uncover what's top of mind, and then you can link back to that initial research and exploration that led you to the vision in the first place.
Definitely. Thanks for sharing that. The next question states, how do winning business teams view themselves? Do they view their teammates as merely coworkers, or is it more of a familial culture?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will say that during COVID right now, I lead a team at CISCO of about 40 people. And COVID has been a really tough time to be on a team, to lead a team, to be a team member supporting your team members. And I think it's exposed a bit of, what do we look for out of our teams, and what's the real reason that we find ourselves on teams? We continue to drive success, but what I see time and time again, that despite the challenges that we faced, is that the team sees themselves with a sense of pride. So I believe, I hope that my team is a best or winning team. And that's, I think, reflective of the pride that I've seen my team have. And that's kind of the key thing I would say is, I've heard many times team members feeling proud of the work that they're accomplishing, recognizing each other and celebrating each other, and feeling a bit of more, like you mentioned, kind of a familial culture, right? And I think that that's absolutely true. But where teams trust each other, where they support one another, where they have each other's backs, if they're a winning team, I think the number one thing that you'll see is just a sense of pride, where people are excited to be a part of that team. And to stay on that team. So absolutely more of the familial side. If you have a team that sees itself as just an engine or a machine that's pumping out output for the company, it's never a great experience and not the type of team that you want to be a part of.
Yeah, for sure. I know when I'm working on a team, it's much more fun to root each other on than just get the work done.
Yeah.
The next question states, how do you build a team that will foster diversity of thought?
Yeah. I will say that many companies are very focused on that, as they should be. right? And we talk about diversity, we mean a lot of different things. We're talking about full spectrum diversity. And I think thought's critical, and your backgrounds and your experiences lead into your thoughts. When I think about the formula that I shared earlier about synergy, right, where 1 + 1 = 3, there's a formula with diversity of thought too, right? And it's kind of the primary colors. So kind of bear with me as I share something that I learned in elementary school, where we talk about how you take blue and you add blue to it, you'll only ever have blue. You separate them, they're blue, you put them together, they're blue. But then you take blue and you add yellow to it, and now individually you can have blue. On that team, you can have yellow. But on that team, you can create something that's completely different than what either of those two colors bring to the table themselves. You bring green, right? And so when I think about kind of the primary colors, that same concept applies. For diversity of thought, first of all, you have to have people from diverse backgrounds. And so I think as recruiters, as hiring managers, we should absolutely be looking at people that have diverse backgrounds, because that's going to bring diversity of thought. But I think the other thing too is important on a team is that the leader celebrates and encourages diversity of thought. They set that tone, and where they don't encourage that diversity, it'll be stifled. And you'll find people that follow each other down the same path and are afraid to disrupt. And that's that element of trust. If you have that element of trust, then people are going to be more prone to bringing in diversity of their experience or thought to the table. So it's absolutely critical to a winning team that there's diversity on the team, and the leader can set the tone to make sure that it is easy and okay to have a different perspective.
That is a really interesting way to look at it, and very memorable as well. The next question states, can you share a time that you did not create a winning team, and what did you learn from that experience?
As a leader, I actually have a couple teams that report up into me. And the nice thing as a leader sometimes of multiple teams is you get to look across each of these teams. And what makes one team successful, or where teams are at kind of in the characteristics of a best team. I had one team of recruiters on my team that were having some challenges. In a lot of ways, it was actually the former leader on the team. And so we brought in a new leader. That other leader did not encompass the values of a best leader within CISCO. And so we had to make a change in leadership. We recognized that first and foremost, that set the tone for creating that team back into the best team that they had been. And there were some elements and characteristics to the best team, but with a leader that didn't encourage those things, it was stifled. And so the first thing we did was brought in a new leader. And the new leader, instead of focusing on the business challenges to begin with, the first thing she did was phenomenal. She focused on the team. And we had a lot of conversations about how do we support the team members to be successful? How do we open up dialogue and collaboration among this team? How do we build a culture of trust? I will say that there were some tough decisions that had to be made with team member changes on the team, and some people moving out and some moving them around to other teams where they could be a different or a better fit. So there were a number of changes that we had to make, but in essence, we knew that the culture of the team, or the DNA of the team, the sum of its parts did not have the characteristics that we needed. So first, we brought in the right team leader. Second, we tried to build that team. And if anybody wasn't able to kind of move along, we knew that as a support function, we needed to drive success for our business. We worked as long as we could to get the team members to align themselves to the characteristics of a best team. But to be honest, as a leader, sometimes you have to make some hard decisions, and we had to make some changes on the team, which was tough. But looking back, that team is one of my best performing teams today, and the leader is still there. And kind of to your earlier question around how best teams see themselves, this team absolutely sees themselves as a team, and they have pride in who they are, and that did not exist before.
That is an exciting turnaround to see how you took a tough situation and made it very successful. The last question we have from students is, what is your biggest piece of advice for young business professionals entering into a new business team?
It's a great question. And biggest piece of advice, I'm gonna go for pieces. I'm probably gonna share a couple versus just one. The first one will go a bit back on the presentation that I shared today. Recognize what you're looking for in a culture and an organization, what you believe makes a best team, what you found from whether it be this or research elsewhere. Understand that the team leader and culture that you want to align yourself to, and don't compromise, right? If you compromise it's going to be a challenge. At the end of the day, we only get so many choices. So it may be that you align yourself to a team, a leader, a culture that isn't the perfect fit, and that's okay. Be cognizant of what can create those teams and organizations into a winning culture, and try and infuse those things into the team, right? So we're not all going to get that opportunity from the onset to join a perfect team, but it's how can you contribute and make that a best team. The other thing that I will say is, think beyond just yourself. It's important that people, I think, don't just, and in the business world, coming from myself, an undergrad in business, an MBA myself, and always trying to think about how I can learn and grow myself. I think it's critically important to think about yourself, but also think about the team. You'll find, I think, better value, happiness, and success when you look beyond yourself and focus on the people around you. And maybe one last thought, as you come into the business world, don't be confined in the box that they give you, right? I think it's absolutely critical that whatever box that they give you, you absolutely knock it out of the park. But don't be confined by that. Look beyond yourself and beyond your role. Think big, think more global, think more cross-functional. What it's going to do is it's going to open doors for you and going to build more skill sets. And it's going to help you to stand out as well as somebody who sees the forest through the trees and can see the big picture of the strategy of what you're trying to accomplish. If you stay within your box, it's likely that you'll stay within your box. So definitely see beyond whatever role they give you. But like I said, don't take that for granted and take that as an opportunity to sacrifice the box you're in. Absolutely, whatever they give you, knock it out of the park, but just see beyond it as well.
That's great advice. Thank you so much, Greg, for sharing all of your expertise and knowledge with us. And thank you, students, for joining us today for our event. On the final slide, you will see the URL for the attendance survey, and make sure you fill this out if you need your class credit. And thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you, Baylor students.